Hi, I'm John deSteiguer, the president of Oklahoma Christian University. We've got a very special guest on campus. I want you to meet Dave Dravecky. Dave has a great story. Dave was on campus this morning, spoke to our students in chapel, spoke to a private luncheon afterwards, and would be speaking at the Athletic Hall of Fame dinner tonight, except for the snowstorm that Oklahoma Christian and the surrounding area has just experienced. Dave, welcome to Oklahoma Christian.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. I guess I brought the snow from California. Not. We're trying to get rain out there and lots of snow and nothing's happening. But it's still great to be here.
Well,
It really is.
listen, we're thrilled that you're here. You have such a great story. I want to go back to the very beginning. As a young boy, you wanted to be a Major League Baseball player.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I was 7 years old, and I had two heroes growing up as a kid, Sandy Koufax and Vida Blue. And I wanted to be just like them. And I remember those days sitting out in the driveway playing baseball by myself. I mean, I would toss the ball in the air and catch it, and usually it was around 4:30 in the afternoon because I knew that's when Dad was coming home. And when Dad came home, I could play catch. I never wanted to play catch with my brothers because they would never throw the ball back the right way, and I'd go chasing after it. It was just a mess. So I always waited for Dad, and it really started right there with my father, because as tired as he was, as dirty as he was coming home from work, he'd look at me and he'd say, "Give me 5 minutes. I'm going to go wash up, and I'll meet you in the backyard." And that's where the love began. And from there, it just began to blossom in relationship to each level of amateur ball that I played in. The only problem was there wasn't a school in the country. Not one university in the country recruited me to play baseball. So I did the next best thing. I was living in Youngstown, Ohio. Youngstown State University was a 20-minute drive from our home. And I decided to walk on and play for that baseball powerhouse, the YSU Penguins. Kind of like the weather right here. And Ohio gets a lot of cold weather in the wintertime.
Right.
But that was where all of a sudden the dream took the next leap. And it was that college experience that was so wonderful for me. And 4 years of baseball at Youngstown State University, and then in 1978, in the June draft of the Major League draft, I was selected in the 21st round by the Pittsburgh Pirates. And so the first leg of my dream had become a reality, and I was now a professional baseball player, making $500 a month. Played for 9 weeks, so you can calculate even I can calculate my income with that. And I was so grateful to come back, get married, and supplement my wife's income.
That's great. That's how much later did you end up actually in San Diego pitching for the Padres?
In 1982, I made it to Hawaii, and that was really cool. We were there for 6 weeks. It was 6 weeks of vacation, even though I was pitching. And we had a wonderful time there. Our daughter Tiffany was born on June 6th of 1982. 2 days later, I get a phone call. The farm director for the Padres is congratulating us on the birth of our daughter, and in the same breath says, "You're going to the big leagues." You talk about overwhelmed. I mean, my whole life was around, finding the woman of my dreams, and I found her, marrying her, and now having a family with her. And now Tiffany is a part of the equation. And on top of that, more important than all of that, is now understanding where God fits in this, right in the center, right in the middle of this thing called our life. And as a result, now I'm finding myself off in the big leagues, and the dream has become a reality. For 7 years and 116 days, I was like a kid in a candy store.
You've just painted what would appear to almost everybody to be the perfect life. You have the woman of your dreams, you have your family growing, you have faith in God, you're doing exactly what you want to do, and it's probably more like play than work.
Yeah.
So you play for the Padres, you pitch in an all-star game, you make it to the World Series, you're traded to San Francisco, a storied tradition and team, the Giants. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that was hard. At first, it was really hard. I mean, living in San Diego, we had settled in. We thought that I would not only start my career there, but end my career there. That was the desire of my heart. And I'll never forget, on the 4th of July of 1987, we're in Montreal, and the manager for the Padres at the time called me into his office along with Kevin Mitchell and Craig Lefferts. And, he looks at us. I'll never forget Larry looking at us and going, well, guys, I've really enjoyed having you as players, but we've traded you, and you're going to the San Francisco Giants. When we got there, we went to Chicago. 4th of July, we take off, we're going to Chicago. And Kevin Mitchell breaks out. It's 2 home runs in the first game. I mean, it's just nuts what's going on. And when we get there, they call us into the manager's office, and Al Rosen, the president and general manager's there, Norm Sherry, the pitching coach, and Roger Craig, the manager, and looked at the 3 of us and said, gentlemen, you are the final 3 pieces to our puzzle. We can't tell you how excited we are to have you with us, because we now feel we are positioned to win and go into postseason play. And sure enough, 1 game in 1987 kept us from getting to the World Series. And that was such an amazing experience. Oh man, I will never forget that. And it went from being a horrible thing to a really, really good thing, and being a Giant. It really was.
I guess it's the next season you're with the Giants, and you're having some pain, or you have something growing on your arm.
Yeah.
And cancer is discovered.
Yeah, just a crazy time. I mean, I open up the season, they give me the ball on opening day. Dodger Stadium, Chavez Ravine, 55,000 people. Dave Dravecky versus Fernando Valenzuela. You couldn't have painted a better picture. And we win 5-1. I hit a double off of Fernando. I was more excited about that than the win. and I'm thinking, man, I'm on my way to winning 20 games. And by September, I was being told that small lump that was now half the size of a golf ball was cancer. And I just said, God, you know what? I don't know what's going on here. Jan and I are just, this is amazing, and we have no clue what's about to happen. But whatever it is, please give us the strength to endure. That's all we ask. We just want to be able to endure this journey.
So, I mean, you're at the peak. I mean, you are at the very top. Again, the wife of your dreams, a growing family, a profession that you love, a relationship with God. You get this news, derails, at least temporarily, your pitching career. You're told that you can come back, but you come back early. You go through, you have surgery done, you go through treatment, and you want to be back on the mound.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a 10-month process.
Right.
Doctors told me when they removed the tumor that they said, outside of a miracle, I'll never pitch again. And for me, all that meant was, okay, the odds are against me, but that doesn't mean I can't try, because the worst thing to do would be to walk away from this and wonder for the rest of my life if I could have. And so down this path I went, and 10 months later I'm standing on the mound in Candlestick Park after going through this rigorous, intense rehabilitation that had extreme highs and extreme lows.
Right.
Many times walking in, figuratively speaking, walking into a wall and getting a bloody nose and thinking, God, I can't do this. My wife at times saying, why don't we just walk away from this? It's too much. And we had people who were around us. This is the beauty of the way God shows up. People came into our journey and encouraged us. Teammates. I mean, the organization was absolutely wonderful in encouraging me every step of the way.
What about that first game back? You win.
We win 4-3. So I'm on top of the mountain and feeling great. 5 days later, we're in Montreal and actually felt really good, and ended up facing Tim Raines. I rear back to throw a sinking fastball to Timmy, and it never makes it to home plate. My arm just snaps in half. I go falling to the ground. Will Clark's on me almost immediately, trying to get me to breathe. The trainer comes out. He's trying to get me to breathe because I'm in the middle of this intense pain going into shock. And I'm laying there, and I have to be perfectly honest with you, John. A lot of people have asked, well, what were you thinking at the time? I mean, were you mad? Were you angry? Were you upset with God? What was going on? Did you,
Right.
I mean, what was happening? I said, you know what? To be honest with you, I didn't have any of those thoughts. I was laying there going, oh my gosh, once I got my breath, I'm thinking, God, what are you up to? What are you up to? I mean, I made 3 starts in the minor leagues, completed all 3 games, and won them. Then I get to the big leagues, I throw 7 innings of one-hit shutout baseball, complete 8 of 9 innings, and get the win. And now I'm laying on the ground, and I've got a broken arm. What are you up to? There is something so much bigger than baseball that's going on here, so much bigger. And I didn't know what it was at that moment, but I was about to discover
That kind of unfolds.
Yeah.
Now, do I understand that your arm broke right
there, halfway between the shoulder and the elbow. Yeah.
Okay. So, but it was another break that you suffered later that season
Yeah.
in celebration that actually sent the doctors back to the arm and found cancer
More
again.
cancer, yes.
Describe that scene.
I don't like talking about that because that was one of the stupidest moves in my life. So Tom Seaver.
But maybe saved your life
Absolutely.
in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom Seaver was sitting next to me. It was postseason play. It's the 9th inning. We're getting ready to march out there for a celebration. He looks at me, he goes, Dravecky, you are not going to run out in that pile, are you? You're in a sling. You've got a broken arm. You're crazy if you go out there. I said, Tom, do you realize I only had 2 games this year? I am a part of this team. I have to celebrate with my men. This is amazing. And I mean, I go sprinting out there. I'm the first guy in, and I get hit from behind so hard that my arm actually has a clean break straight across the humerus bone, 2 inches above where the original break was. But as you said, following that, I went in for another checkup, and as a result of that, they found more cancer. And so now this story and this journey that I find myself on, takes another twist. And all of a sudden, where I thought I'd finally overcome cancer, I was back in the valley and back in a very difficult place and struggling tremendously to understand what was out in the future. Because of what I was experiencing in the present. And in the middle of all of that, the mistake that I made, which I think was sincere and honest in the reality of this, was that I didn't know how to articulate my pain. I couldn't communicate what was going on inside. I couldn't share the frustrations. I couldn't share the hurt. I couldn't share the fear. As a Christian, it was really hard to sit there and expose my weakness in front of people, so I had to be strong. And I was actually being told, I can't believe how strong you are in your faith and going through all of this, and you're such a wonderful testimony to all of us out there who are going through struggles. And I'd hear that, and inside I was crying. I was crying desperately for somebody to just allow me to go into a room and spew it all out because it was so hard. And so I ended up wearing a mask for a long time to protect an image, but it wasn't reality. It wasn't what was going on inside of me. And over time, what ended up happening was that I started taking it out on my wife and kids. And so behind closed doors, I became verbally abusive. I entered into that ugly phase because I didn't know how to articulate my pain. And I feel so thankful. Today with the kids in chapel, I talked about God's grace. When I think of God's grace, one of the purest examples that I have is my wife, Jan, displaying it to me when she could have walked away at any moment during that ugly part of our season of journey. And she loved on me and said, even in your worst moments, I know this isn't your heart. And I love you regardless of your ugliness. And John, that gift was what allowed me to, even in the midst of her going through her own personal struggles, to begin to move out from underneath all of that stuff. And I was talking more about the stuff and no longer stuffing the stuff. I thought, this is amazing. There's so much freedom in this. Why did I bottle this up for so long and then take it out on the people that I love so much? This is nuts. But now I was free.
Man, thank you for sharing that with me on camera. And I know you've shared this before, but let me tell you, when you talk about you were wearing a mask, I think that's something that we probably all deal with, and we're all afraid to take the mask off. I want to ask you, I love a quote, kind of an analogy that you make, and I want to ask you about that. You talked about much of your identity had been wrapped up in your left arm. That was your pitching arm. You said, not unlike a concert pianist losing his or her hands, or a marathon runner losing his or her legs. your identity was wrapped up in your arm. And so when you lost your arm and shoulder to cancer, what did you go through?
Yeah, it was an identity crisis because my whole world was wrapped up in being a baseball player. And it's really interesting. I say that as a Christian. My whole world was wrapped up in being a baseball player. And God was in that, but what I learned through the difficulties, and in particular in the identity crisis, was that my worth wasn't in what I did. It had nothing to do with what I did. As a matter of fact, it has everything to do with who I am. And it's really cool because John says in 1 John 3:1, I believe, how great is the love the Father has lavished on us that we should be called children of God. And then he writes, right after that, he says, and that is who we are! Exclamation point. I use exclamation points all the time. So I'm enamored by that because that's where my worth is, in being a child of God. And I'm not just partly in, I'm in all the way, man. You know, I've got all of him. I don't just have a piece of him. When I came to faith in Christ, God gave me everything about him, you know, and made me brand new, which is what's so cool about this faith is that every day we wake up, we can remind ourselves that we're brand new and been made in the image of Christ. And we also have, you know, what is really cool and what we have a hard time with is we struggle with this whole idea that, you know, okay, we're sinners who are saved. But if that's all there is to the story, that's depressing. What I've come to learn is I'm a saint who sins. Because the reality of the cross is that he imputed his righteousness to me as a result of this being made brand new. And I don't boast in that righteousness because the reality is that Jesus died on the cross in order for me to be that saint who now is a sinner. And that's humbling. Because when I look at that, I go, oh my gosh, I don't deserve that. And yet he freely gives it. And when you begin to embrace that gift, what's the byproduct? What's the result? The result is I don't want to sin. The result is I want to live a life trusting God. And as I trust him, knowing that in trusting him, it pleases him. And with that, I then can take the two greatest commandments that Jesus gave me and actually live them by loving God with everything I've got and my neighbor as myself.
God bless you, Dave. Boy, you have, in the last couple of minutes, you have preached and taught a great message. But frankly, for several decades, you have preached and taught and lived a great message.
Well, thank you.
Boy, thanks for being here. I want you to come back, maybe when the sun is shining a bit more and it's 70 degrees and there's no wind.
I'd love to do that.
What a great blessing you have been to our campus today.
Thank you.
Dave Dravecky, boy, a life of triumph and then of tragedy that ends up being triumph as well. Dave, God bless you and thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate that. Thank you.